So I've been dailing the Pixel 9a since I've got it in here, and all I can say now is that I get it. This thing is 500 bucks, and that's if you buy it at MSRP. And after spending more time with it, other than the fact that I cover smartphones and buy flagships and other crazy things like foldables to share with you all, personally, I really don't see myself actually needing any more. I mean, sure, the cameras aren't insane. There's no real optical telephoto. It uses a digital crop. The display is 1080p, it's 120 Hz, and it looks great despite the bezels on the front, though it's been really easy to actually ignore these, especially when you go ahead and put a case on your phone. Now, sure, it's not the most premium feeling device, but I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the actual hardware anyways. Like, the weight is significantly reduced from the more top-end Pro Pixel devices due to the back glass being plastic and not having a huge camera housing that sticks out like crazy. And I honestly thought that the cameras on this thing would be limiting to me. I mean, this is my livelihood. I make videos and I post things on social media. If I uploaded a photo and didn't say that it was taken with the 9A, no one is going to be able to tell. It's honestly been impressive. It can even shoot in RAW, which is something that the iPhone 16 can't do unless you buy the Pro. And when it comes to the 9A, I think it's quite well-rounded if you're just in the market for a phone and don't need an Ultra or a Pro Max device, since I really don't think you actually lose out on much when it comes to the 9A, considering the price difference between those devices. Okay, now this is where I would come in and say, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hear me out for a second. I don't sell anything to you guys. I've never had my own product, but a buddy and I have just made some really cool wallpapers, and I think that you'd actually really like them. There's the Foggy Forest pack and the Grainy Gradient, and both are in 4K. They're both super high resolution, and they come with a 16:9 version for desktop or laptops and a 20:9 version for your phones. I like them a lot. I've actually been using them. It seems like the feedback from you guys on places like Twitter and Threads has also been really positive, so thank you for that. I'll drop a link below if you're curious about them. There's no pressure or anything. I really appreciate the support, and everything from these does go directly into supporting the channel to help me out when it comes to like equipment and getting cool devices in, so it does go a really long way. The gray from the Grainy Gradient pack is free, so it's worth checking out. And if you wanted to pick up a pack to support the channel, you can use code YouTube20 for 20% off. Again, there's no pressure or anything, but I really do appreciate it, so thank you. Anyways, let's start with what Google has done right on this device. This phone has a 6.3-inch display, and personally, I think that this is the perfect size. I've been leaning more toward these compact devices, even though I wouldn't necessarily call 6.3 inches compact, though this is one of the reasons why I love the Pixel 9 Pro so much over the XL, despite always being a top-end kind of like flagship purchaser, and those devices are all almost pushing up to 7 inches now. It's just very comfortable to use. I can navigate it one-handed despite having smaller hands. The 186 gram weight doesn't become fatiguing, and even when adding what I would consider to be a very good but slightly bulkier case like this case right here from D-Brand, the grip case, it's still like not a nuisance at all to carry around. It's quite slippery without a case though, since it has that frosted plastic back with matte aluminum side rails, but at the same time, it does also fit in the hand nicely. Google's put a lot of thought into the shape of their phones, despite everyone writing this flat-sided trend off as an Apple copy. I think that Google's rounded edges and radius of these corners make it feel really good in the hand. One of my complaints with the S25 Ultra was just how sharp and how big that phone felt in the hand with those flat sides. And when you use a case on that phone, it makes it incredibly uncomfortable because it adds a lot of additional bulk and heft and weight, and it just a lot when you go to put it in your pocket. So I do like this approach a lot more, and it's why I've also been leaning more toward this size of device recently, even though I've only been a user of those really big flagship devices recently. Now, Google's also made this phone a touch thicker. Now, usually thicker isn't a good thing, but there are devices that this has become appreciated in. Take the MacBook, for example. Apple had a really weird approach where they were trying to just make these devices as thin as possible, which had an impact on battery life, it had an impact on cooling and performance, and it also reduced the amount of ports you have on these devices dramatically. When Apple made their new Pros thicker, despite these actually being much more efficient, they showed us that, hey, we actually kind of care about what you think. And I think that for these devices, this was an amazing shift. Like, this was appreciated in every way by everyone that actually bought these products. The problem is that phones are on this trend now of just constantly trying to become thinner. With the rumored iPhone 17 Slim and Samsung's Galaxy Edge around the corner, battery life seems to be a concern. And other than that, like, it really is just a marketing gimmick at the end of the day. It doesn't really impact how you actually use your phone, because again, once you throw a case on this device that is ungodly expensive, you're just never gonna actually appreciate how thin the phone actually is unless you just stare at it all the time. I don't get it. But this is why I appreciate Google going the opposite route with the 9A. Doing this has allowed them to cram a 5100 milliamp hour battery in the Pixel 9A. Now, maybe that's not impressive to you with some devices creeping up to like 7,000 in China, but this is the largest battery that's ever been in a Pixel, and it just so happens to be inside of their cheapest one. The fact that Google in the 9A is using the Tensor G4, which is their flagship SoC, the one inside of the Pros and the Pro Fold, means that while this battery is larger, your battery life is also extended. Like, you get more battery life out of the 9A than you would on anything else that Google has made when it comes to the Pixel. Don't get me wrong, I am still kind of annoyed at the fact that this device only charges at 23 watts and 7.5 watts wirelessly, but I will say that I don't have any battery anxiety with this phone, and the battery on it has been absolutely incredible. I see user reports of people getting like upwards of 12 hours of screen on time on this thing. Like, I don't have enough days where like I can confidently tell you exactly how much I'm getting consistently, but I will say, like, I really don't think that's far off. I actually think the performance of this in terms of the battery has been incredible. Yeah, I think going this route, making it a little bit thicker, packing in a bigger battery was a great call from Google. Now, I quickly brought this up in my last video, but the Exynos 5300 modem. Yeah, there's a lot of complaints about this thing in the past. It's the modem that Google used in the Pixel 8 series. From everyone else is a horrible modem, and that this is like apparently a really big drawback to the 9A. The thing is, I've actually been using this phone, like I said, it's been my daily driver since I got it in. There isn't an issue with this device in terms of its call quality, its cell reception, the stability that I have on my network. It has been a good experience, and it's nothing that I can tell apart from any other phone that I've used recently. But at the same time, this isn't a great modem. I have had a good experience with it. I don't really know what to tell you or how to make a comment on this, because for me, it's just worked, and I don't know, don't fry me about it. This is just my experience, okay? Like, okay. When it comes to cost cutting, I expect this in a couple of major areas, and one of them is the display. So I don't want to make this video and just make it seem like I'm shilling for everything that Google does, because that's not the case at all. So I want to get the biggest offender out of the way, and it's not the display quality or the color accuracy or like whatever. It comes down to the PWM dimming. If you don't know what PWM is, please stay here, because it's actually important, and I'll explain it in kind of like a rough way that just helps you grasp it a little bit. But if you're someone that's prone to headaches when looking at your devices, or you feel kind of like nauseous sometimes, this might not be the phone for you. Basically, in short, this device is very flicker heavy. Every phone screen flickers. Some are faster and some are slower, and the higher the PWM is, the faster it flickers. The lower, well, the lower it flickers. You get the point, okay? So 240 hertz on the Pixel is bad. Now, this device does have the same PWM frequency as the Pixel 9 Pro. So it's not just a problem with this device in general, but there's a reason I'm making this known, because a lot of people, not me, but a lot of people have complained about the Pixel 9 Pro's display, and it kind of causing like straining and fatiguing and just being a nuisance for them when it comes to their eyes. Now, I'm not expecting this lower cost phone to have a more technical display, but I just want to make it clear, because this is something that could genuinely be uncomfortable for people with a sensitivity to this. So to put it into perspective, this has a 240 hertz PWM frequency. The OnePlus 13, which I reviewed not that long ago, has a 2160 hertz PWM frequency. It's a lot faster than this device. So yeah, it's not something that I've had a problem with personally, but I want to put it out there because it is actually a real problem, and it's an area that I think Google really needs to improve when it comes to their displays. That being said though, aside from that, it is actually a very, very good display. At 422 pixels per inch, this 1080p panel is really sharp. It is also just incredibly bright too, considering the price point. Now, I mentioned the display seems to fall off a little bit in the sun and get dim a little quicker, but when turning off auto brightness, I don't actually notice this severe display dimming, so I think the ambient light sensor on this phone is just a little sensitive. But for everything that I do here, like Google Messages, social media, watching YouTube, keeping up with my tasks or my calendars and email and so on, it is just an incredibly smooth display. It looks very good, and it's not something that is a weakness on this phone at all. Like, I'm really happy with this phone and its panel. I also don't think that 1080p on a phone is bad. Most devices with 1440p and higher displays are set to 1080p out of the box. So there's a chance you were getting ready to comment 1080p is way too low on a phone. Meanwhile, you're using a device that is probably set to 1080p right now. Now, let's talk about the cameras for a second, because I've been posting a lot of photos from the Pixel 9a on Twitter, and nobody really seems to be batting an eye. Now, I'm not like a photographer or anything, but there's a lot about this setup that I really like, despite it like technically being a downgrade when you compare it to the Pixel 8a. The actual sensor is smaller, and so is the megapixel count, but in no way do I think that this translates to the image quality. So the main camera is 48 megapixels, which is pretty good. Like, when it comes to snapping quick photos, the sensor itself is actually just pretty capable. And like I said, when shooting in RAW and getting that whole output as well as the flexibility, it does make the Pixel quite compelling. And if you are just taking photos on auto and relying on Google's processing, the output is actually very good. And I've always said I like how punchy the images are. Like, they're just shareable out of camera. And yeah, there is a lot of processing, but it's very tasteful in a way that actually makes the image look better. I think the 13 megapixel ultra wide is kind of like meh. Like, it's good, but it's not something that you're gonna be using if you want like a really high quality image. Now, it's the exact same as the Pixel 8a, same with the selfie camera. They're both fine. Like, one thing that a lot of people seem to do is pick apart individual components and name a phone at like a $200, $300 price point. Yeah, there are gonna be better phones that have some features that are better, but when it comes to, again, like the whole device as a package, I really think for $500, Google actually nailed this phone. Now, let's talk about a couple things with the 9a that are actually worth noting. The base model of this device is the same as the higher cost option. The only difference is the storage. There's a 128 gigabyte model and a 256 gig model. Now, the one that I have here is the $500 128 gigabyte Pixel 9a. And in this case, I think 128 gigs is fine. Personally, I think 256 gigs is better, especially if you're not someone who's really good at like managing your files and stuff like that in photos. Yeah, like, I'm much more okay with 128 gigs on a $500 phone than something like the iPhone 16 Pro, which starts at 128 gigs and it's over double the price. I will say though that it is kind of a shame because the 9a is still using UFS 3.1, which is slower and less efficient. Not that efficiency is really a concern when it comes to the 9a, but again, UFS 3.1 is also something that's still being used in the Pixel 9 Pro. So it's hard to like pick at this phone and say what it doesn't have when Google's top end flagships also just don't even have these features. But again, like on the 9a and for what this device is and what it's trying to accomplish, I don't think that this is a bad thing. It does lack Wi-Fi 7 though, if that's a concern to you, but at this point, this is just kind of nitpicking. Like, at face value, I think the hardware is objectively really good, especially here in Canada. There's just not a lot of great options at this price point. But here's the thing though, a lot of what makes Google's Pixel series devices so special is their software. Like, the Pixel is the only Android phone that my wife considers switching to regularly when I show her these phones from her iPhone. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for this. One, I think the devices are attractive. I think they are good looking devices, especially the Pro, but the UI is very simple, it's clean, but it's also very functional in a way that isn't super convoluted. The notification panel and quick settings are in the same window. Another swipe down gives you more settings and brightness. A swipe up brings you a global web search and app search and shows your app drawer, which are arranged alphabetically and are super easy to find, especially if you're like me and just like having all of your apps in an app drawer for a clean and uncluttered home screen. And as much as I hate talking about this, it's become really important lately, but AI. Google's implementation is genuinely really good. You have native Gemini baked in, which is much better than Apple Intelligence. I personally like the Go Live feature to just have conversations with Gemini that you can do on things like ChatGPT. but it's just on the phone directly. And I do think that there's some useful or at least fun Google features like the AI photo editing, which has allowed me to trick my mom into thinking that I went to the mountains and then on a day trip to New York just because I was bored and I'm kind of like a shit disturber. But these are like incredibly powerful tools, and there's a lot more in this phone, and I'm just barely scratching the surface. But for a consumer looking at it as it is, a value-oriented device, I think that it offers a lot, and it's something that I have no problem actually just recommending because it's genuinely a good phone. And like I said, I don't really have any intention of switching off of this immediately or anything because it does everything that I need it to do, and it does it well. Like it's not something that I feel limited by having this in my pocket, and I actually just quite like this phone as a whole. And yeah, I mean, like, if this is a phone that you're buying because it's within your means, I really think that you are picking a great device. There aren't a whole lot of other options, at least here in North America, that are a direct competitor to something like this, especially because you could find these on sale or with trade-in promos and so on. I am excited to do like a focused long-term review of this phone and actually like kind of dive deep into everything that I've learned. But I wanted to just make this video because I wanted to update you guys. Like, I am actually using this phone. It is something that I find that is intriguing, and I think this is a device that a lot of people will have their eyes on because of the price point. So as always, thank you for watching this one. If you enjoyed it, a like and a sub go a long way. If you want, the links are in the description to the wallpapers. I do appreciate the support that you guys show me all the time. And if you've watched this video all the way through, dropping an alligator emoji in the comments down below goes a really long way. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.